Plan, plan, plan. If you click off this video right now, that's what I want you to take away. It may seem backwards, but whether you're planning a feature, a level, or a whole game, taking time to plan something at the beginning will make implementing it much quicker. I can only hope that Breezy will be a counterexample to this. Let me put it in perspective. I first decided to make Breezy at the end of my sophomore year of high school. I'm now about to graduate. If I had planned the game properly, it could have seen a Christmas 2021 release date. It's important to know that planning doesn't have to be restrictive. In business, an expansion plan is a common idea, and I think there's an analogy there with game development. Planning doesn't have to mean that you plot out every single level, feature, and unlockable skin in the game before writing down a single line of code. So here's the method of planning that I'll try to use in my next game. First, I'll need to prototype. This is something that I actually did right with Breezy. It's a remake of this jam game I made in 2020, so I knew how the gameplay would work beforehand. Over the next year or so, I want to make as many prototypes as possible before picking one to expand on. Then I'll plan out the structure. Once again, I'll emphasize that I'm planning vertically. I want to determine what features and systems I have in the game beforehand, then add content using those systems. So if I was remaking Breezy, for example, I'd plant the golden teas and the level progression, so that I could actually make levels and unlockables in the future. Finally, I'll make a Gantt chart. If you've never heard of a Gantt chart, it looks like this, and determines when you should be working on any given feature. This is the most flexible part of the plan. If I suddenly have to take, say, a week off, I could rearrange the Gantt chart to match. Importantly though, the Gantt chart determines the total scope of the game. If I find that I'm more productive making levels and new characters, I could switch some time from making levels to characters, in order to compensate while keeping the deadline intact. But since I planned out these features beforehand, I won't find myself suddenly having to insert 2 weeks to add achievement. With this planning in mind, if my next game ends up similar in scope to Breezy, it should only take about a year. If it takes 2 years, then at least it'll have a lot more content. This next lesson is a little more personal to me. A few months ago, I started using the Rust programming language for some non-game dev projects, and interacting with Rust has probably made me a better programmer than any class could. Now, even when I'm writing C#, I'm still thinking from the perspective of data structures and error-free functional programming rather than bodging together something that works. This goes hand in hand with the structural planning I was mentioning. This is actually the main reason that Breezy isn't a multiplayer game. If I had thought about it for around 5 seconds, I could have seen that multiplayer was obviously a good idea, but adding it at this stage would probably mean about 3 to 6 months of delays. If I had been writing more modular and functional code, a nice lasagna rather than a pile of spaghetti, multiplayer could have been much easier to implement. This next lesson is very general, but it makes sense. As a game developer, your background gives you certain strengths and weaknesses. Coming from a programming and music background, I obviously didn't have very much of a problem with these things in Breezy. However, I never 3D modeled at all, and my 2D art wasn't all that much better. Now, at this point, I think I have at least a loose grasp on 3D modeling, but my 2D art is still pretty weak. However, with Breezy, I realized that I can get around pretty much anything 2D with Breezy's art style of untextured 3D models and minimalistic UI. I can even cover up some of the weaknesses in my 3D modeling with a lot of post-processing. However, it's important not to go overboard here. Pretty much every game needs some 2D art, some programming, and some music. This is where, once again, planning comes in handy. If there's something you're weak at, plan around it and find the most sensible alternative ahead of time, so you don't make any irrational decisions like, oh, I don't know, making your entire game pixelated. Oh, speaking of, this is a lesson that all game devs know, but one we tend to forget. If something seems weird, just step back every once in a while and ask, does this make sense? For example, if I was making an indie golf / puzzle / strategy / platformer game where minor bumps in the ground could alter the course of a stroke, then making the visuals pixelated would not be a good idea. Luckily for Breezy, I was able to step back and see that with the help of some of my commenters. In the end though, the biggest lesson I learned from Breezy really is to have a plan. As game devs, and as people, we're always learning new lessons, and this is one that I want to emphasize to all of you as I wrap up development. So if things ever start to go sideways with my next game, maybe link me this video? Oh, and tell me the biggest lesson you've learned from game development in the comments. Until next time though, have a good day.